What's going on, Dolphins fans? Jacob here, Dolphins Syndicate. Hope everybody had themselves a great Thanksgiving. Haven't got to talk to you guys since then. Since then, we had the Dolphins beat the Jets, and these are the 5 things we learned in that game against the Jets. So for number one, usually I start with some sort of negative, but today I'll talk about the positive. This is the first time that we controlled pretty much from the beginning of the game to the end of the game in a win in a while. I guess you could say maybe back to the Panthers game, but even that Panthers game, it was a little ugly at first, and then we blew them away the rest of the game. You win by 21 points, and you're playing a Jets team with Tim Boyle that you knew going into the game you weren't expecting superstar quarterback play. We broke down in the live stream last Wednesday about how, look, Tim Boyle might be the worst quarterback in NFL history. He does not deserve to be in the NFL. There's no reason he should even be a backup based off his college stats, based off his previous pro stats. I understand that they no longer want Zach Wilson, but this is not the guy. This is not the answer. I personally would have rather gone with Trevor Siemian, but they have both of them inside, so look, they made their decision and they had to live with it. It wasn't good. Boyle, 179 yards, a touchdown, 2 interceptions. That one touchdown coming at the end to Garrett Wilson when it really meant nothing. We controlled the game from beginning to end. There were some moments where we didn't look our best. Tua threw 2 interceptions, including a pick six. The second interception obviously leading to Javon Holland's pick six, so it was rectified immediately. But there was never at any point in the game where you truly felt like the New York Jets had a footing. You felt like the odds were stacked against them. You felt like the fans were just ready to boo. They were ready to be upset. And you're going in there with a superstar offense and a defense that has gotten better each and every week since becoming fully healthy with Jalen Ramsey coming back. You felt like this is a game that we could run away with in the beginning of the game, and that was the case. They had an opportunity to take the lead at the end of the second quarter, and you know what? That would have made things interesting, but getting that pick six completely drew out all the energy into the game. We go into the halftime with 17 points, and the Jets only scored 13 on the game. So from that point, they were done. Tua, he had the interceptions. It wasn't his best game. It wasn't a game you're going to remember in 10 years from now. 243 yards, a touchdown, 2 interceptions, was sacked a couple times. The ground game, 94 yards, 2 touchdowns from Raheem Mostert. He played superb. I love the effort and the contribution from Jeff Wilson. 56 yards on 11 carries, 5.1 yards per carry. He's a back that offers a little bit different. He's a little bit thicker up top, has a little bit of a bigger torso, a little stronger than Raheem, a bigger runner. He's not necessarily a pass catcher, but we did see him get involved with 3 catches. That was a surprise to me. I was joking around to Donovan while watching the game. That feels like the first time that he's caught a ball since the Chicago Bears game last year where he scored a touchdown. And then on the defensive side, you get those 2 interceptions. The one, obviously, one of the most fun plays I've ever seen as a Dolphins fan, Javon Holland returning that before halftime. Sacked Tim Boyle 7 times. Ground game only had 29 yards, only 179 total air yards. It was a bad game for the Jets. This is what their season's going to look like for the rest of the year. They have no hope of making the playoffs or making this any sort of savable season. Meanwhile, the Dolphins just continue to push forward and have successfully started off this 5-game stretch of games that you expect to win. So number 2, the thing that all Dolphins fans really cared about after the game, Jalen Phillips going down for the season with a torn Achilles. And I will say, I watched the replay. The specific injury didn't necessarily look like it was the turf's fault, but I could also argue that building up to that point, he was playing on the turf for almost 4 quarters, almost four full quarters, at that point in time. So it's not like he just ran onto the field and tore it first play like Aaron Rodgers did and didn't just get stuck. But I wouldn't be surprised if playing on it for the entire game led up to that point, but that individual play, it's not like he got stuck. Just as soon as he pushes off, it goes. So he's going to be done for the season. Probably a little bit of next year. We'll see what happens, but that's next year's problem. And I'd say we probably should be going out and looking to the market for an edge rusher. And the fact that we went out and looked for Derek Barnett, there's interest there. I'm not sure if that's the guy I want to bring in, but I see that instead of seeing that as, oh man, we're really interested in Derek Barnett, I see that as, okay, we are interested in going and getting some edge help, which you can't have too many edge rushers. We saw that with the decision to keep Emmanuel Ogbah, which right now looks fantastic since he's going to be necessary. He's probably going to be a starter for the rest of the season. The fact that we kept him at his high price, despite having Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips starting, so we're playing as much as we are to Emmanuel Ogbah on a backup for a backup. It leads me to believe we take the edge position really seriously, and we'll then look to pursue some. I expect us maybe to do it this week, if not this week, next week, but just bring somebody in that can compete and that can help out. And especially you look at some of the top available free agents in general. I'd say one of the best ones is a guy that we had in-house last year in Melvin Ingram. He won that September Defensive Player of the Year award, kind of slowed down for the remainder of the season, but he's not going to come in and expect to start, and he's not going to expect to have like a 60% snap percentage or something like that. But there's other guys. There's Melvin Ingram, there's Carlos Dunlap, there's Chandler Jones, who, do you really want to get into that? But he is available. There's also another former Dolphin that we used to have, Robert Quinn. So there's options to be had. There's guys out there that, look, they're not going to come in and usurp either Bradley Chubb, Manuel Ogbah, Andrew Van Ginkel in the pecking order. Maybe they do. Maybe they play that well. But they're going to be just that next guy in line, which you need. Andrew Van Ginkel, as the fourth edge rusher, has gotten a lot of valuable snaps, and a lot of big plays have come from him, despite being the fourth man in line. You need that depth, and I am confident we can find it in the free agent pool and not necessarily replace what we were getting from Phillips, because, I mean, just like we've seen every year in Jalen Phillips' career, he just gets better as the season progresses. You're not going to get that productivity, but you can still find a very, very talented player from free agency at the edge position. Number 3, something to be a little concerned about. The turnovers are starting to stack up. We have 16 total turnovers on the season, which puts us 18th in the NFL. We've thrown 11 interceptions, so 10 of those were on Tua, 1 on Mike White, that pick 6 that he had, I believe, against the Panthers. And the rest were fumbles. We saw Darrington Evans get a fumble there on our side of the field, and then we saw Tua throw 2 turnovers. We also saw against the Raiders multiple turnovers, multiple interceptions by Tua. Well, actually, I think it was just 1 interception by Tua on that deep shot. Excuse me. The rest were fumbles. Fumbles in our own territory. It is something. It is real. It is a thing that you do have to look at as a fan and wonder why this is happening. Why are we putting the ball on the ground? Why are we putting the ball into the opposition's hands? Now, if it was just a single-off game, we're playing against the Jets, 2 stellar corners, and 2 good plays. The first one, Tua really just diagnosed that, and the slot corner undercut it. And then the second one, I think he just short-armed that a little bit, and then DJ Reed was able to fight with Tyreek Hill and get the ball. And then obviously Darrington Evans just dropping the ball is not ideal. But these are things that have continuously happened. In our last 2 home games, we started off the very first play of the second half with a turnover. Last week, again, the bomb over the top to Jalen Waddle that Tua overthrew. Don't see that a lot. And then a couple weeks prior to that, put the ball on the ground against the Patriots on a failed exchange. I believe this was Raheem Mostert. They're starting to add up. And it's something that can plague a team really quickly, being reckless with the ball. And that is something that has been a slight criticism of Mike McDaniel, is that he runs a little bit too loose of a ship, and that there's not the nitty-gritty details might be getting skipped over a little bit. How true that is, I'm not sure. But when you start to see the turnovers, penalties at times have been an issue. The pre-snap penalties as well last year was a really big issue. That's gotten mostly cleaned up. And the penalties in general have gotten mostly cleaned up, but it's still a thing every now and then. But the turnovers this year has been the problem. Now, fortunately, we're not near as bad as the Buffalo Bills, who have 23 turnovers on the season and have the most turnovers in the NFL. So we have a direct comparison for second place in our division, and a team that we'll talk about very shortly. But the turnover situation needs to get cleaned up. That's not something you can't play like this, back-to-back games with 3 turnovers and expect to win on a regular basis. Number 4, Jalen Waddle finally got more involved. We started to hear a little bit of whispers throughout the week that Jalen Waddle was unhappy with his role with the Miami Dolphins, that we feel like the Dolphins were just force-feeding Tyreek Hill yards, trying to get him to that 2,000 yards mark, trying to get him to beat Calvin Johnson's record. In doing so, we've seen Jalen Waddle's production drop off, and you've seen him in press conferences. He hasn't explicitly said he's unhappy, but you can see it in his eyes, you can see it in his mannerisms that he's not happy with his production this season, and it's valid. Now, you are winning, so at the end of the day, that's what should matter most. But with wide receivers, they want to be involved, they want to be focal points in the offense, and he hasn't been that as much as I'm sure he'd like to. He's got 691 yards, just under 700 yards. He's still on pace to crack over 1,000 yards, but he is on pace for his least amount of catches of his career, and I believe he is on pace for the least amount of yards in his career. So that's, as a wide receiver, They like a little bit of the glory. They like a little bit of the showman. And we got to see when he made that catch deep down the right sideline what that meant to him. What meant to him to make that big play. I'd love to see a 114-102 split between Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle for the rest of the season. I'd love to see both of them cracking or just around 100 yards. Both of them equally dangerous on any given play. The defense does not know where the ball's going. Stop me if you've heard me say that before. This defense operates best, or this offense operates best when the opposing team's defense does not know where the ball is going. And getting Jalen Waddle involved in this offense is pinnacle in doing that. He's an excellent receiver, not as quick as Tyreek Hill, has had some issues with drops, but he's still a top 15 receiver in this league. Him and Tyreek Hill make the best wide receiver duo in this league. Getting him involved, keeping him happy, keeping him energized, keeping him involved in each and every play is essential, is important for this Dolphins offense, especially when you come against defenses like the Ravens, who we saw really just stifle the Chargers yesterday. We're going to have to deal with that at the end of the year. The Cowboys defense as well. Teams that can put a top over the defense can take away your best players. When you have both Tyreek and Waddle on fire, that's a lot tougher of an ask than Waddle's just kind of lingering over on the side and Tyreek is doing his thing. This needs to continue for the rest of the season. I love seeing Jalen Waddle get his. I'm excited to see what he can do for the rest of this year. And number 5, finally, the Buffalo Bills played their part. Man, that was a very entertaining game, and the Buffalo Bills are certainly a better team than being 6-5 going into, or sorry, 6-6 rather, I think it is, going into their bye week. They're at like a plus 100 point differential, but it doesn't matter. They continue to turn the ball over, and they continue to find ways to lose games. They've lost, I think, 4 games this year where they had the lead going into the last minute or two. Yesterday, it happened against the Jets in regulation. It happened against the Patriots. And it happened against the Broncos the previous week. So, 4 separate occasions that the Buffalo Bills have lost games in that situation. And they have also never won an overtime game, 0-6 now with Josh Allen, going into an overtime game both in the regular season and the playoffs. The Dolphins win next week against the Commanders, who, I mean, we saw how bad they got torched against a very solid Cowboys offense. I'd say probably they're the worst defense in the NFL at this point in time. You're looking at them, the Panthers, even though they're competing and they have pieces at the very least. That Commanders defense just looks totally gutted. They got rid of arguably their 2 best players on defense, and now they're already not a good defense, and now they're just a shell of what they once were by getting rid of Chase Young and Montez Sweat. I expect us to handle them next week, and that'll put us officially at 3 games above the Buffalo Bills, which would essentially mean, if all is mapped out according to plan, that would just require the Buffalo Bills to lose 1 more game over the remainder of the season for the Dolphins to have the division on lock. I expect us to win this game against the Commanders. I expect us to win the game against the Titans, and I expect us to win the game against the Jets. And then that opens up that 3-game stretch against the Cowboys, against the Ravens, and then finally against the Bills, the last game of the season. The Bills, a rough schedule from here on out. We knew that was going to be the case, and we knew that started with the Eagles game yesterday. They have this bye week. Then they open back up at the Kansas City Chiefs, then at home versus the Cowboys. The Chargers, who, look, I don't believe in the Chargers. I don't think the Chargers believe in the Chargers, but they have the talent. They have the quarterback. Staley might be gone by that point. That I can see them putting up a serious, tough opponent, being a serious, tough opponent against them. The Patriots, they already lost to them once, but it is at home for Buffalo, and then us. So I'd say they really only have 1 easy game for the rest of the year, that being at home against the Patriots, and tough games against the Chiefs, Cowboys, Chargers, and finally against us at home. If they lose just 1 of those games, likelihood is we have our first division crown since the late 2000s. The first time I'll be able to see personally with my own eyes the Dolphins play a home playoff game, being at the game, should be at the game at the very least. So they played their part. The Dolphins played their part. They won the second game of the 5 that we expect to win all 5 of these games, and then ride out and just figure out. At this point, we're going to be looking at what the seeding is. And again, just so fortunate that's where we are. There's still things you can complain about this team. You can complain about the turnovers. You can complain about how we haven't beaten a team above 500 this year. You can complain maybe about the style of his offense. It's a little too pretty. It's a little too cute. There's not enough punch in your face. But we were 8-3 atop the division. 3 full games, or at this point, I guess it's 2.5 full games until we play next week above the second place team in the Buffalo Bills, who are going the completely wrong direction, and we're going the completely right direction. I feel amazing as a Dolphins fan. Let me know how you feel about this team in the comments down below. While you're down there, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, and make sure to have a great rest of your day. Take care, everybody.